So sports.
Sports.
Talking about the World
Two
Series.
bad guys. Sports.
Seventh game of the World Series tonight, gang. It's a close one. Name either team in the World Series right now.
It's baseball season.
I will give you all the cash in my wallet if you can name either team without looking anything up in the next minute. I won't do that. I have money in my wallet right now.
Mets.
No. Bad guess, too. We had to guess one team. Terrible guess. Hey, we're two fat guys.
And we just watched even more Disney movies. This time it is Disney in the 50s. All of the ones from the 1950s. So we have Cinderella, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, Lady and the Tramp, Sleeping Beauty, and that's it. That's closing.
Yes.
That's what it says there in your notes.
That is what it says in my notes.
I was like, I don't remember that movie. Oh, God.
Yeah, so in case you've forgotten where we're at, coming out of the 40s, that was when they did the package films.
I had forgotten. Jesus.
They had done the package films. They had also started doing some associated productions. That's when we did the Song of the South and those. And World War II was going on. Yes, obviously there are other things going on. So dear to my heart. The war was going on. There were budget cutbacks. Also, after Snow White, the initial releases for the other films were not quite as successful. So the studio kind of once again coming into the 50s found itself in some financial straits. They were, I believe, some $4 million in debt going into 1950. So
That's
they really
a lot of dollars in 1950 money.
That's true. So they needed it's basically like a movie in debt. Like $4 to $6 million was like a budget for them. So it was like a movie in debt. So they really needed one to be a success. So going in the 1950s.
Well, good job on these.
Yeah, they made a decision. Okay, they want to do a couple things. They need to become financially viable again. And the studio wanted to move away from shorts and package films and go back to full-length feature animated stories.
I'm curious how those did box office-wise. Like, how those package films did in theaters. Obviously not well enough to where they're super in debt at this point. But
yes.
I'm also curious how you'd even market something like that.
Yeah, it's difficult. Well, also, it's hard for us to imagine because we have TV, internet, and literally everything at our fingertips. And that's
like no one's releasing a series of shorts unless you count movie 43. But
no one counts that. No one should ever count that for anything. But yeah, that's what I was going through my notes. Like one of the things is, we're looking at it from a modern audience, but that's not necessarily how the films came out. So basically, what the studio did, it was kind of like when they did their first feature film. They didn't have a whole lot of money, and basically they had to pin their hopes on one movie. So what they decided to do is pin it on a fairy tale with a classic princess and put out a movie and hope it worked. And once again...
So you're saying it's like a Cinderella story?
No, I'm saying it's like a Snow White story that they just ripped off and put Cinderella's name on. Yes, so they decided to go with Cinderella. They had... everything else in the 50s was like in pre-production going into this time, and they had to put it all on halt. Like, all right, we need Cinderella to work, and then if this works, then we will get to do other movies. So yeah, it's really similar to Snow White, just in sort of its premise and setup. And fortunately for them, much like Snow White, it was also a huge success when it came out. Without this film, without a success, we wouldn't have had the production of all the other films. In fact, the studio may have just gone out of business, and we wouldn't be talking about this marathon. Well, I might, because I'm a pretentious film. Yeah, could be like, the Walt Disney Studio. I'd be like, no one's ever heard of that. It's all about Don Bluth Studio. Anastasia, woo. He didn't do that. That was Fox.
I was going to say that.
That was a bad pull. Bad pull. All right. But talking about Cinderella as a movie, one thing that really jumped out to me is they're still really struggling with a plot.
Yeah.
This, especially now that we, when we get deeper in the marathon, we get to movies that have a plot structure and characters that develop. This one is rough. The plot, as you think of it in Cinderella, is very backloaded. I was shocked how backloaded it is. Like, okay, Cinderella has evil stepfamily. And that is basically the first, hour and 10 minutes of this movie. Yeah. It's Cinderella having an evil stepfamily. Then she gets a ball gown.
With the mice.
Yeah.
And
yeah, she gets a ball gown. And then the rest of the story, she gets a ball gown from fairy godmother, goes to the ball, and then leaves her shoe behind. Prince comes and finds her. They get married. That's the back 10 to 15 minutes of the movie. It's just all, jammed in there. It's, crazy front-loaded with all this nonsense. Because, there's extended nonsense with the animals. She's, getting the animals up in the morning.
What, a Disney movie with extended nonsense? Random slapstick with animals?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
That doesn't sound right.
The mice space go on forever. She sings the birds for too long. Even though I liked the songs, the music lesson stuff just went on too long. And also I found out they had cut some plots because they were going to do a little more character development for the prince and build him up as a character. I'm like, oh, okay, that would tie into more of the plot that we're all expecting for and waiting for. and also help you, like, there were some scenes they cut them, like, oh, it sounds like we would have found out more about Cinderella and the prince and the king and her stepfamily, and there's like, we really need these animals chasing each other around the yard in the morning before the stepfamily gets up. That's what's really important. I really think it's just, they're just haunted by their shorts. Like, the shorts, a good short film for them was built around those bits, and that's perfect, because, you know, a 2 to 6 minute cartoon should have just lots of great comedy, and they know how to make that, and they're really good at it.
Well, it's what they're all trained to do as animators, especially at that time, was, you know, you don't, when you think about, I'm going to make this animation, you don't think, all right, I'm going to make this 90 minutes, what's the plot like? Like, animation is hard, it takes a long time, and especially when you're, you know, only doing things by character and things like that, I can totally understand why a lot of these movies don't have the same plot structure as other movies, even of that time, did, just because of the medium and how, like they all of those animators came from doing shorts.
And if you watch their live action features at the time, it shows that they didn't know how to do that either. Like, it's just they, as a studio, they had all the animation people, and they never really. I think it took them a while to get other filmmakers and other input in, so they're like, oh, okay, an anime film needs to be like just any other film. So we're still kind of in a lot of this. You're going to get a lot of that throughout this era, and actually still pushing on that they're still trying to find their feet in terms of getting a plot. Also, I noted that they're much better at drawing convincing and interesting characters if they're goofy or evil or something weird about them. Thinking of Cinderella, like, I remember the stepsisters very vividly, and the, like, wacky-looking characters and all the animals. But, like, Cinderella's appearance washes over me, like, she's...
Well, I mean, that's...
She's playing... The prince washes over me, like, in my brain, like, nothing grabs onto him.
That's probably a little bit of the Uncanny Valley sort of thing, where if you try to draw someone realistic, but you're not making it realistic, then it just doesn't have the same effect as you as if something is ridiculous, has gone another direction. As far as stylistically. So that I also agree with that. I cannot pull up an image of Cinderella's face in my brain right now.
Like, I see her dress, and I know she has her hair in a certain way, but
like, I think I remember what Prince Charming looks like, but that also could be any of the princes.
That's true.
Literally any of them.
I would love to give you a lineup. At the end of this, we should do a lineup and see if we can successfully pick them up.
Oh, Jesus.
I don't think we do as well as we should.
I don't even know if I can name all of the princes.
Well, some of them you have to like go to the extended universe to find their names.
Like Ewoks, it's never mentioned.
It's true. One of the last note I had in Cinderella, which at first was going to be one note, and then I realized it might be something else, is I wrote down, I think the music in this movie is really beautiful. And I'm just wondering if it's because the 1950s is close enough that music sounds like how I think music should sound. Because I'm going back to like Snow White, like while I really enjoyed like Hi-Ho and stuff, the rest of the music did not appeal to me in a certain way. Or even Pinocchio, like the songs I liked, it was both the recording, because it's so old, and also just the popular musical styles at the time. It's not quite as moving as this stuff. Whereas like Cinderella, like they had some really nice, like classically beautiful like pieces for Disney.
Well, it's a weird thing throughout this whole marathon. Something that I've noticed is how, in doing the chronological order like this, we see that Disney has always done like pop songs, basically. Like it is
for the time.
It is for the time, which makes things like Frozen
makes sense.
Make a lot of sense. At first, it's like Frozen, like, oh, this is all just. It sounds like modern day pop. Like I don't want to listen to that. I want to listen to the classic stuff. I was like, oh wait, that classic stuff was the pop of its time. Like I'm sure that came out and people were like, oh, this sounds like crap.
Well, we as kids were like, whoa!
More of this stuff.
Oh, yeah. Eating it up. So that's Cinderella, 1950. First one started off, Say the Studio. It's a good movie. It's enjoyable. It does drag in the beginning. But, I mean, that's what you get. The cartoon script's very entertaining, though, so. Moving on to Alice in Wonderland. The first note I have is singing the title. Yay! Yeah. For the longest time, all Disney movies had an opening song that just sung the title. I believe Cinderella also had one, but Alice in Wonderland just sticks out to me because it's Alice in Wonderland. How do you get to Wonderland? It's like this long meandering.
It sounds like how we would have made fun of it if all of the other ones had done it before that. If we were asked to make a fake parody Alice in Wonderland song,
it sounds exactly like
it's that.
It's the
same one.
This film was not as successful. financially. It actually, I believe it didn't even get a re-release, because a lot of these films, that's how they also made money, because they re-release them every year. But didn't get a re-release during his lifetime, during Walt Disney's lifetime. This one feels even less focused in terms of plot.
Yeah.
It's merely interested in animating these vignettes, because it's based on 2 whole novels.
It's like 80 minutes.
Yeah, it's like 80 minutes long, and the bits are great. Like, the little sections, I remember them all vividly. I was watching, like, oh, right, I remember this. Oh, yeah, I remember this. But I'm like, this whole movie is just a haze to me.
Like, I think the Alice in Wonderland stories, like the Through the Looking Glass, is great fodder for fun animated bits.
Yes.
That they did. But, yeah, as far as plot and a story goes, not.
Yeah.
I mean, it is not exactly a stellar adaptation, but that's not really what they were trying to do. They were like, oh, it's like a series of Alice in Wonderland themed bits.
Yes.
Which are fine. They work. And that's what I said, like, even the stuff that we talk about plot wise that doesn't, it's from our perspective of being fans of very plot driven stuff.
And also growing up in the Renaissance, which once we get there, we'll talk about how the advances made during that time.
Like, I mean, a lot of these are still very enjoyable, and like I said, what Disney does, it does well.
Fun little trivia fact, if you're ever out, this Alice in Wonderland is the Disney film that has the most songs in it. The highest number of songs in Alice in Wonderland. Unfortunately, much like the sort of movie as a whole, they end up becoming sort of largely bland and forgettable. There are 2 or 3 that are good,
and like a verse.
Yeah, people will probably remember like Very Merry on Birthday, but it's super short and it's actually not that interesting. It's just kind of repetitive. But the Mad Hatter's a fun character, so they remember that. I like Painting the Roses Red. I think it has a good rhythm to it. The Flower song is great just because it's a nice, beautiful choral piece. But there's just so many songs. It's almost constant singing, but it's just kind of just gets lost.
Yeah, it gets hard to pick out some there.
Good, however, visually, very interesting film.
Oh, yeah.
Way over Cinderella, where Cinderella's just kind of like, oh, it's a refined Snow White. This was just visually very interesting. Yeah. It was colorful. The actions were like getting to watch the growing and shrinking and all these fantastic elements happening. The characters were great. You had the Tweedledee and Tweedledum, the Cheshire Cat, who is still iconic to this day. Like I mentioned, Mad Hatter, all the hares, the playing cards, the Queen.
With all that stuff, it's really kind of letting them stretch their legs into the more like Fantasia-esque style that they like to do, that they like to have fun with. As I'm sure an animator, that stuff is the most fun to do.
And it was great for them. Like, you could tell they're having fun, and it worked gangbusters. It was a great move for them, and it made for, visually, probably, with the exception of maybe Sleeping Beauty, the most interesting visual film out of this group.
And that's
debatable. We'll talk about that, but just lots of great stuff to look at in this film. So even if you find the plot kind of meandering, the bits are really good, and just it's great to look at. Yeah, it really lets you do the full, lush, colorful, ridiculous things that you want to do as an animator that you can't do if you're trying to tell a story with real people in it.
Yeah.
So Alice in Wonderland, some good, some bad. Pretty overall, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, puzzle. Yeah, I don't think we have. I mean, I don't think there's any of these are.
There's no I don't really like.
Negative, yeah.
Peter Pan is probably my lowest one, which is what's next. Out of all of them, I'm probably like,
really.
I'm most about Peter Pan, and I think what it really is, I was thinking about, is like, does this suffer from Hook? Does this suffer because I've seen a really emotionally satisfying, interesting Peter Pan story, and this is just kind of like the most generic.
Do you know that some people don't respect Hook?
First off, those people are wrong. You're wrong if you're out there and watching our video, which, if you're one of our 4 friends who watch these videos, you're not a friend anymore, so sorry. But please watch the video still. But I'm really wondering that, because also, since it's so early to most people, since I don't read a lot of 1900s fiction, 1904 literature. Yeah. I mean, I own the book, but I haven't read it. My first introduction to Peter Pan is sort of the Disney one, so it is the most bland base, sort of like, okay, here's what a Peter Pan story is, and I'm like, okay, and then things since then, specifically Hook for me, took it to a really good level.
Yeah,
and like Peter and the Starcatcher and other things.
I've heard really good things about the 2006 Peter Pan. With Jason Isaacs. I mean, I've heard a lot of divisive things, but the people that liked it really like it.
Mm-hmm. I've not seen it either, so that's something we can also do when we watch a bunch of this. But, so I was thinking about that, but some things about this film, accurately racist. Like, the Native American characters are treated as racistly as they would have been in the book. And
okay, I thought you meant like
No, not like racism. No.
Like, it's accurate. Everything that
No.
I'm like, Jesus.
Here's the thing. When I talked about the racism, one of the controversy, Disney kind of hit behind like, well, look, it's in the book, and we want to be faithful to the book. I'm like, but you changed a bunch of other stuff in the book, so maybe change the very racist connotations in this. So, it's true source here, but come on, man, you can do better than that. Also, unfortunately, it's the best song in the movie.
I was gonna say, I wish that the most racist song was not the best one. The best one,
but it is. It hands down is the best one. Why is the Red Man Red? It's just the best. Musically, it's the most interesting. It tells the story, and
especially, I mean, I remember, like, that's one of the ones that I remember as a kid when, like, you don't really think about racism when you're a kid. So I remember as a kid loving it. Mm-hmm. Because when you're a kid, everything is a stereotype because you haven't learned anything about the world. But like it was fantastic, and I didn't think like, oh, that's how all Indian people are. But I remember enjoying it, but then watching it as an adult, I was like, oh,
like this is rough.
Yeah, I was like, that's less okay. It's a really catchy song though. Damn it. Mm-hmm.
Visually, this film, I thought, especially coming off Alice in Wonderland, there was nothing new enough for me. The flying was good. Like, I like seeing flying. It was interesting. There wasn't a whole lot of that. I don't like that song.
You can fly.
But I like the look of them flying around. Like, that was something that was new and interesting. But visually, especially coming right off Alice in Wonderland, like, if this was after Cinderella, I'd be sort of singing its praises as well visually. And like, oh man, Neverland was so lush and full and rich. And this is kind of like a toned down version of Wonderland. Like, there's cool stuff here, but it's not quite as ridiculous, not quite as fantastic and over the top. But I wasn't really like thinking back to it. Like, there's no shot that I was just like, wow. There's no like instance or character or anything that I was just like, that's great. Also, I mean, feel free to give your opinion on it. But what I wrote down is I was bored by this film as a whole. Like when I watched
the end,
when I watched it this time. And this one made me think of, I wonder if Disney's just yet to learn how to adapt properly, because almost all their films are adapted from a source material, a lot of them novels, and I think they have a hard time understanding that stories need to change. Like, they're cutting things out, but they're really just taking, okay, we like this bit from a book, let's do this exactly as it appears in this book, and then just lay these 4 parts exactly as they are in the book next to each other, and then that's a movie. But
I'm curious how many of these were the first time that it had been adapted.
That's true. I know Peter Pan wouldn't be, because Peter Pan was a stage show, and then there's the black and white, and so there's
not Peter Pan, but just for a lot of the stuff in general. Because taking adapting something for the first time, especially early. I mean, Snow White started. It was in the 30s, when cinema was still relatively.
And that's
fresh,
the thing. And I wrote
is trying to figure out the whole. The industry was probably trying to figure out how to adapt things. We're still trying to figure out how to adapt things well.
Yeah, the little note I made was I think they might just be a victim of the time. And so that's another thing. Like, I am out of time. I am from the future. I know how good things can be adapted.
I've seen Game of Thrones.
Yes, so I could see flaws and things.
I saw Watchmen.
Yeah.
That wasn't an adaptation.
That was just a shot-for-shot remake, which, I mean, I enjoyed as a fan, so if you love the Peter Pan book, I'm like, oh, there's that scene, this is great, they're with the Indians, yeah, woo, and then Captain Hook's here, and there's a croc, yeah.
But, then also they super changed the entire ending of Peter Pan.
That's true.
But nobody cares.
Yeah, Disney has this weird sort of switcheroo, like, okay, we're going to faithfully adapt all these, 4 bits we want, and then radically change the ending in the beginning. But that's Peter Pan. I came across kind of bored, and it might just be, it's a victim of its sort of placement in the marathon, and its sort of place in history.
Yeah.
Lady and the Tramp. Do we really need to talk about anything other than Bella Notte? Because, I mean... This is the night, it's a beautiful night. Like, that is this movie. This movie is that song and those dogs eating spaghetti. That is what this film is.
There's a lot of great bits with the other dogs.
No, there are a lot of great bits, yeah. And I have more things to talk about. But my first thought was like we should just say, hey, Bella Notte's great, and then wrap it up.
Yeah. We're talking about just great sequences. I mean, obviously iconic sequences that has been emulated ad nauseum.
Yes. Visually, I put this film, it was cool because they did a lot more urban stuff than they normally do in a lot of the Disney films. But since I've sort of seen cities before, it wasn't quite as visually striking as, say, Alice in Wonderland. But I think it's a nice step up from, Peter Pan, where it's sort of rehashed, or Cinderella, which was a rehash of a lot of other, fairy tale.
One thing that I like, and it's not exclusive to Disney, but my guess is they probably would have at least pioneered it, is urban stories about animals.
Mm-hmm.
How you just get a great perspective of
the city
from there. You're like
from lower.
Everything is shot low,
yes.
And but it's not like looking from above. It is
looking at that level. Yeah,
at that level, which I think is really interesting. Just visually and just like not story wise, but just conceptually, I think. That I like, and we see that also later in like Aristocats, Oliver and Company, things like that, that are really interesting. But it's one thing I wanted to point out about. About that one.
This one, I do want to say there's racism again.
The song that I thought was totally in Aristocats, but it was not.
Get your shit together, Disney. Come on, it's 1955 at that point. Let's cool it with the racist stereotypes. Fortunately, that's not the best song in the movie, so dodge that bullet. Dodge the old Peter Pan bullet, as I call it.
Are you telling me that We Are Siamese is not better than Bella Notte?
That's true. That's what I'm telling you. And just to note, so I'm not a broken record, I actually thought the plot made some big leaps in this one. The only problem is they did sort of two separate plots that they jammed together at the beginning and end that didn't really work as well. But I think basically, because it's a story of this dog, and then her owners have a baby, and it's sort of her dealing with, okay, like, are they not going to love you as much, and then also falling in love with the baby and wanting to protect the baby. And it's also a story of this upper class dog who sort of meets this lower class dog and gets to see the city and has this adventure trying to get back home. And there's not a whole lot of like crossover between them. Like, okay, it's that same dog, but while they're venturing out in the city, I don't feel any stakes about like the baby or the family or none of that. And then it comes back at the end and they all sort of collide. And it's a nice climax. Like, it's a good, exciting ending to the film. So I feel like Disney's getting closer and closer. I'm like, all right, you guys have like each of the individual plots I felt I didn't have a real problem with. Mm-hmm. Even though there were plenty of bits still, lots of good funny bits with all the dogs.
I think, of all of the ones in this section, that one probably kept my attention the most. Maybe Sleeping Beauty.
That's the thing. Sleeping Beauty is...
Lady and the Tramp is in Sleeping Beauty. They're close.
Yeah, so they're getting an idea of what plot is. They just need a little help with the structure and how to get sort of plots and subplots to work together a little better. But it's, Lady and Tramp was definitely a sign of good things to come. I felt plot-wise. Then moving on, so Sleeping Beauty. This one was delayed for a while. It'd been working since like the 40s. They've been working on it. This is when Disney was really focusing on trying to get live action films going and working on its parks, and he was sort of distracted. So there was a lot less personal touch in this film from Walt. So there were plenty of delays, but 1959 it finally came out. The note I made is like, is this a movie of style over substance? It might be, but it has one hell of a style. Yeah. Like, if you argue that they chose to emphasize the style of it and the appearance of it over really the substance of what they're putting on the screen, then that may be fair. I'm not saying it is, but it could be fair. But holy hell, what a look.
Oh, yeah. It looks... I'd say there's still substance there. I mean,
there is. It's not lacking substance. I would say you can make an argument for it, and I'll talk about it. I have a few
That's true. I guess even though there's a lot of substance, there's even more style. No matter where you are on the substance scale.
Yeah. They're getting a little better. There's is there some time wasting? Yes, there is still. Well, that's funny. Like that's a small bit. I'm thinking specifically of like the length of the fairy stuff. Like, the fairies mess around, and then the two kings singing the Skunks song together. Like that goes on. Yeah, that goes on for a little long. So there are still some time wasting bits, but they're sort of broken up, and it's different characters doing it. Yeah. It's not like, here are these rats again, or here this group of animal again. It's like, okay, well, here's these... We get a little glimpse of the king, see what they're doing. We get a little glimpse of the fairies, see what they're doing. So that kind of breaks up the time wasting. And also, they're not right next to each other. It's not a big chunk of time wasting, and then all the story like Cinderella was. But visually, brand new graphic style, sort of inspired by the art prints. If you think of a classic, like Renaissance novel that has, like, the pictures of people at the start of it. Like, just sort of that flat graphic style. That and like a little bit of influence of Art Deco, because it also is sort of borderless flat colors on top of each other. Went into this film. They hired a specific designer, like an outside designer, to be the lead designer on this film, much to the resentment of some of the animators. A lot, yes, much to the resentment of some of the animators. He hand painted all the backgrounds. He personally, it's the first movie that had just one guy do all the backgrounds. Jeez. So he's responsible for all that. But it looks awesome, and it's so cool and so different that even if I didn't like it at all, just having it in the middle was just such a breath of fresh air, and it was great. Mm-hmm. That's one thing I found too when you're doing all these Disney films, especially with us watching them, sometimes on the same day or like close to each other. A little different if you had to wait a year, and like maybe it's fine to see a similar art style. But for us, I really appreciating this new graphic style. It was great. This is the last fairy tale to do for some time, though. So after this,
for better or worse, yeah.
I think they really like the new style they did. I think they got a lot of positive response and thinking, well, we don't want to do the same stuff ever again. I think they were fearing repeating themselves, so they tried to look for some more things as they went forward. I did put that the balance of the plot still needs help in this one. This plot is good as well. I think Lane and Tramp's probably a little stronger if I ignore how visually beautiful Sleeping Beauty is. The plot still needs some help. What I really found lacking in this film was character development. Think about Aurora. Does she really change at all in this film? Like, she has the fewest lines of any Disney princess, even including the one that loses her voice. Which is a ridiculous fact.
It's like how the only Buffy episode to be nominated for a writing Emmy was Hush.
Yes. No more people stop talking. The prince, we get some stuff with him, but there's not really enough growth as characters, where I feel like as they get really better at it, like the films I'm really moved by, like, oh shit, these characters are going through real emotional stakes, real changes, and real problems, and coming out different people on the other side. So while they're getting sort of better at arranging plot so I don't get bored and bogged down by time-wasting goofiness, they still need a little more like, okay, real stakes for these animated people. Treat them just as serious dramatically as real actors would in a live-action film. Do you have any other thoughts on Sleeping Beauty?
No. I think we covered the fairy stuff. I thought was delightful.
No, I
wasn't expecting that at all. Like I didn't remember hardly anything about this movie. In fact, of all of these, I may not have seen Sleeping Beauty, or if I did, I was like really young. But at least the other ones I had like memories of. Sleeping Beauty, it was practically all new.
Yes.
And I was taken aback. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's
the make it pink, make it blue thing.
No, make it pink. Yeah, the ending was
a great running bit, and it had the payoff at the end.
That's the thing. They did running it properly. They spread it out over the film, and they didn't just have like, okay, we're gonna have 10 minutes of make it pink, make it blue. Like we have a little 3-minute bit to set it up, and then it comes back later, and then it comes back at the very end.
Yeah.
So overall, there starts to begin a lack of awe and multiplane camera in this era. It's not completely gone, and there's not a complete lack of awe. I just talked about how much I love Sleeping Beauty and Alice in Wonderland, but you're starting to get sort of the feeling that Disney's not breaking new ground like they used to. Because you gotta think back to nothing has hit me in this marathon up through Sleeping Beauty as much as that one shot in Pinocchio. There's this sweeping crane shot in Pinocchio that has just like building after building, and there's different platforms and people running, and it was just gorgeous. Okay. And nothing since then has really hit me in that same way. So you're starting to get a feel like, okay, Disney's visual sensibilities may be on the downtick, may unfortunately be starting to get some of the stuff that will lead to their downfall. So it just started in this era. It's not fully there, because like I said, Sleeping Beauty, Alice in Wonderland, beautiful stuff. As we said, unless you're trying something new, it could be a bit stale. That might be a function of our marathoning it. Also during this era, just sort of a side note to this was the end of the regularly produced shorts. So while they would still produce the occasional Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck short, like 1953, I believe, was the last time they would regularly produce shorts,
like the
on a
Silly
schedule.
Symphonies sort of stuff.
They stopped doing that in 1953, which is when Peter Pan came out. So it was a pretty major shift for it, and as I said, Walt was focusing more on other aspects of
building the
empire.
company and the brand.
Yes,
empire is a better word than either of those that I have.
Yeah. So just looking forward, next thing we're going to do is what I call middle Disney, and it's sort of where, okay, they're getting past fairy tales, they no need to try new stuff, they also need to save some money, because budget's getting tighter with more and more stuff they want to do. So they start looking...
Is 101 Dalmatians in that one?
101 Dalmatians is the first of that one, yes. So they start going for some new ground, so we have a lot of interesting stuff to hopefully talk about next time. But as for 1950s, do you have anything else, Dan?
No.
Alright, well, thanks. We're two fat guys.
And sorry for wasting your time.
I'm going to rip Winnie the Pooh a new one.
Why?
Because he has it coming. I mean, he's a stuffed bear, I think, so it's okay.
Oh, bother.
That was a weird, breathy poo. It's a little Eeyore. I sound depressed.
All of my poos are breathy.
Oh, bother.
Yeah, I don't voice my poos.
You need to voice your poos, man. No one's going to respect you if you don't voice your poos.